The reading of my father's will felt more like a coronation than a funeral. My siblings sat in their expensive suits and designer dresses, practically glowing with anticipation as our family lawyer, Mr. Davidson, prepared to distribute the fortune of tech mogul James Morgan. I'm Marie Morgan, though my family barely acknowledges the connection these days. While my brother Thomas runs our father's company and my sister Katherine manages the family's considerable real estate holdings, I chose a different path. I became a mechanical engineer, more interested in building things than managing wealth. To my son Thomas, Mr. Davidson read from behind his mahogany desk. I leave controlling interest in Morgan Technologies, valued at approximately $145 million. Thomas smirked, adjusting his Italian silk tie. To my daughter Katherine, I leave the Morgan real estate portfolio, including all residential and commercial properties, valued at $98 million. Katherine dabbed at non-existent tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. And to my daughter Marie, Mr. Davidson paused, frowning slightly at the paper. I leave the old Morgan manufacturing facility on Industrial Drive, including all contents and associated documentation. The room erupted in poorly concealed laughter. The old factory had been abandoned for 20 years, a relic from when Morgan Technologies actually manufactured things instead of just designing them. How appropriate, Thomas sneered. The family failure gets the family junk heap. Katherine's lips curled into a pitying smile. Maybe you can turn it into one of those trendy art spaces, Marie. You always did like getting your hands dirty. I sat quietly, remembering the last conversation I'd had with Dad before his sudden heart attack. He'd been unusually serious, asking about my latest engineering projects, my thoughts on manufacturing automation. The old ways aren't always obsolete, Marie, he'd said cryptically. Sometimes they just need the right person to understand their value. Mr. Davidson handed me a heavy brass key and a thick envelope. Your father left specific instructions that this was to be opened only after you took possession of the factory. I ignored my siblings' continuing snickers and studied the key. Despite the factory being abandoned for 2 decades, the key looked recently cut. That evening, I drove to Industrial Drive. The old Morgan manufacturing building loomed against the sunset, its red brick walls still solid despite years of neglect. The surrounding industrial park had modernized, but this building remained stubbornly unchanged. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, emergency lights hummed to life, revealing a vast space filled with sheet-covered machinery. The air smelled of machine oil and possibilities. My footsteps echoed as I walked through the main floor. Under each dust cover, I found pristine manufacturing equipment, not the outdated machines I expected, but carefully preserved precision tools that would have been cutting edge when the factory closed. But it was the basement that changed everything. The stairs creaked as I descended, my phone's flashlight illuminating decades of shadows. The basement had been Dad's private workshop, where he developed his first patents. No one had been allowed down here, not even Thomas. Banks of computers lined one wall, their screens dark but their power indicators blinking steadily. A massive safe dominated the far corner. And everywhere, there were blueprints and notebooks, meticulously organized and preserved. With trembling hands, I opened Dad's envelope. Inside was a letter and a set of passwords. My dearest Marie, if you're reading this, you've already discovered that the factory isn't quite the worthless inheritance your siblings believe it to be. Everything here has been maintained in secret, waiting for someone who understands what I was trying to build. 20 years ago, I developed a manufacturing process that would have revolutionized the electronics industry. But I also saw how wealth and power had changed our family, how success had turned innovation into mere profit-seeking. I couldn't let this technology become just another way to make money. It needed someone who understood the engineering, who cared about building things that mattered. It needed you. In the safe, you'll find my original patents and prototypes. The computers contain 20 years of research and refinements. The machines upstairs aren't obsolete, they're custom built for a manufacturing process decades ahead of its time. But be careful. There are people who have suspected what I was developing here. They've been watching, waiting for any sign that the technology still exists. Use the passwords. Study everything. When you understand what I built, you'll know what to do with it. All my love. Dad, P.S. The mechanical calibration sequence is in Protocol 7. You always did have a talent for precision adjustments. I lowered the letter, my mind racing. Dad hadn't abandoned manufacturing, he'd been perfecting it in secret, waiting for the right moment, the right person. The first password revealed schematics unlike anything I'd seen before. The process Dad had developed didn't just streamline electronics manufacturing, it fundamentally transformed it. Components that currently required massive factories and environmental compromises could be produced in a fraction of the space with minimal waste. If this worked, it would revolutionize not just electronics manufacturing, but the entire approach to technology production. A noise upstairs made me freeze. Footsteps moved across the main floor, too deliberate to be random vandals. I quickly powered down the computers and gathered the most crucial documents. Dad's warning about people watching suddenly felt very real. As I slipped out the back entrance, I saw 3 men in dark suits entering through the front, their flashlight beams sweeping the machinery floor. Dad had been right, people were watching, and now they knew the factory wasn't as abandoned as it seemed. Back in my apartment, I spread out the documents I managed to grab. The technical specifications were brilliant in their elegance. Dad hadn't just developed a new manufacturing process, he created an entirely new paradigm for production. But he'd also left me with a puzzle. The patents and prototypes in the safe, the carefully maintained machines, the decades of research, they were pieces of something larger, something that could either transform the industry or be weaponized by those who only saw its profit potential. My phone buzzed, Thomas calling, probably to gloat more about his inheritance. I ignored it, focusing instead on Dad's notebooks. The margins were filled with annotations, references to other documents still in the factory. I needed to get back there, but those men? Who were they? Corporate spies? Government agents? Competitors who'd suspected Dad's secret research? A text message lit up my screen, an unknown number. The Morgan manufacturing facility is more valuable than you know. We should talk. I turned off my phone. Dad had spent 20 years protecting this technology, waiting for someone who would understand its true worth. I wasn't about to let it fall into the wrong hands now. But first, I needed to understand exactly what he'd built, and why he kept it hidden for so long. The next few days were a blur of research and revelation. Each document I grabbed from the factory led to new insights, new possibilities. Dad's process wasn't just more efficient, it was revolutionary in its approach to materials manipulation at the molecular level. Current manufacturing methods were like trying to paint a masterpiece with a roller brush. Dad's process was like having a precision laser, exact, controlled, perfect down to the smallest detail. But it was also dangerous in the wrong hands. The same precision that made it perfect for electronics manufacturing could be used for less ethical purposes. Dad had understood this, which explained his secrecy. A week after the will reading, Thomas invited me to dinner, a first in years. I knew it wasn't brotherly concern that prompted the invitation. That factory, he said, swirling his $100 wine, it's actually quite valuable property. The land alone. I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. I sipped my water, thinking of the hidden computers, the secret research. Not interested. His practiced smile slipped slightly. Don't be difficult, Marie. You're an engineer, not a business person. You can't possibly think you can do anything with that old building. Maybe, I said carefully, I understand its value better than you think. His eyes narrowed. Have you been in the basement? The question was too sharp, too specific. Thomas knew something. The basement's flooded. I lied smoothly. Has been for years. He relaxed slightly, but I'd seen it, the flash of recognition, the hint of knowledge. My brother wasn't just being greedy. He knew, or at least suspected, what Dad had hidden in that factory. Which meant I wasn't the only one who'd been left a secret inheritance. Dad had given Thomas the company, but he'd given me the key to its future. Now I just had to figure out how to protect it. I knew I had to get back into the factory, but this time I needed a plan. Thomas's suspicious questions about the basement confirmed my fears. There were multiple parties interested in Dad's secret technology. Late that night, I returned to Industrial Drive with my old engineering colleague, Dr. Sarah Chen. She'd specialized in molecular manufacturing during her PhD, and I trusted her completely. This is incredible, Sarah whispered as we examined Dad's schematics in my makeshift home office. The precision control at the molecular level. This isn't just ahead of its time, it's practically science fiction. But it works, I said, pulling out the prototype specs I grabbed during my first visit. Dad wasn't theorizing. He built it, tested it, perfected it over 20 years. We spent hours analyzing the technical documents. Dad's process used a combination of quantum tunneling and precision magnetic fields to manipulate matter at the molecular level. It could restructure materials with perfect accuracy, creating components that were currently impossible to manufacture. Marie, Sarah said finally, do you realize what this could do for medical technology? For environmental restoration? This isn't just about making better phones or computers. A noise outside my apartment made us both freeze. Footsteps in the hallway, too heavy to be my neighbors. Back door, I whispered, grabbing the most crucial documents. We slipped out just as I heard someone picking my front lock. They're following you, Sarah said as we drove through the city. What did your father tell you about who might be interested in this technology? Just that people were watching, I replied. But after dinner with Thomas, I think it's more complicated. He knows something about the basement. We headed to Sarah's university lab. If we were going to protect Dad's legacy, we needed to understand exactly what he built and why he kept it hidden for so long. The next morning, I received 2 more messages. The first was from Katherine. Thomas told me about your dinner. Don't be stupid, Marie. Sell a factory before you get hurt. The second was from that same unknown number. Final warning. The technology doesn't belong to you. Make the smart choice. I turned off my phone and focused on Dad's notebooks. The margins were filled with more than just technical notes. There were warnings, coded messages, and most importantly, a name. Dr. Marcus Wong. Found him, Sarah said, looking up from her computer. He was your father's research partner 30 years ago. They had a falling out just before your father started Morgan Technologies. A quick search revealed that Dr. Wong now ran a tech consulting firm that worked extensively with Morgan Technologies, my brother's company. That's how Thomas knows, I realized. Wong must have told him about the research. But there was something else in Dad's notes, references to ethical constraints and safeguards. He hadn't just developed the technology, he'd built in limitations to prevent its misuse. We needed to get back into that factory basement. This time, we went in prepared. Sarah set up surveillance cameras around the perimeter while I worked on bypassing the building's ancient security system. We entered through a maintenance tunnel Dad had marked in his blueprints. The basement computers were exactly as I'd left them. While Sarah kept watch, I began systematically downloading decades of research data. That's when we heard voices upstairs. Check everything, a man ordered. Wong says the prototype has to be here somewhere. I recognized Thomas's voice responding, the basement. It has to be in the basement. Sarah gestured urgently at the emergency exit. But I hesitated. There was one last file downloading, something labeled Protocol 0. Footsteps on the basement stairs. The file finished transferring just as the door burst open. Thomas entered first, followed by Dr. Wong and 2 security guards. Hello, little sister, Thomas smiled coldly. Finding anything interesting? Actually, yes. I stepped away from the computers. I found out why Dad never trusted you with this technology. Wong moved forward, his eyes fixed on the computers. The prototype. Where is it? You mean this? I held up a small device, seemingly simple, but containing Dad's most critical designs. 20 years of research of perfecting something that could change everything. And you just want to exploit it. Don't be naive. Thomas snapped. That technology is worth billions. It belongs to Morgan Technologies. No, I said firmly. Dad left it to me because he knew I'd understand what he really built. Wong lunged for the device, but I was ready. I pressed a sequence of buttons, the calibration sequence Dad had referenced in his letter. Every computer in the basement activated simultaneously, running Protocol 0, Dad's final safeguard. What did you do? Wong demanded as the screens flickered with cascading code. I smiled. Dad didn't just build a revolutionary manufacturing process, he built in protection against exactly this scenario. The computers finished their sequence. Every file, every schematic, every piece of research was now encrypted with quantum keys that would take centuries to break. The technology isn't lost, I explained. It's protected. It can only be used the way Dad intended, to help people, not just generate profits. Thomas's face contorted with rage. You think this changes anything? I own Morgan Technologies. I have the resources to what? I cut him off. To steal something you don't understand. Check your phone, Thomas. He pulled out his phone, face paling as he read the breaking news. Morgan Technology's stock was plummeting. Anonymous sources had revealed evidence of corporate espionage, of secret deals with Wong's firm to steal proprietary technology. Those surveillance cameras Sarah set up. They've been broadcasting for the last hour. Quite a show. Security guards rushed in, but not Thomas's. These were federal agents who had been watching Wong for months. As Thomas and Wong were led away in handcuffs, Sarah emerged from her hiding spot with a satellite uplink device. Livestream ended. The whole thing's been recorded and backed up to secure servers. The aftermath was explosive. Morgan Technology's board of directors voted to remove Thomas as CEO. Katherine tried to distance herself from the scandal, but her involvement in the theft attempt came to light. Me? I had work to do. With the factory now secure, I began the real task: understanding and implementing Dad's vision. The manufacturing process wasn't just about making better electronics. It was about fundamentally changing how we interact with the physical world. 6 months later, I stood in the restored factory, watching the first official test of Dad's technology. The machine hummed quietly, its precision fields assembling medical implants with molecular-level accuracy. Each device would help someone walk again, see again, live again. Sarah, now my chief research officer, stood beside me. Your father would be proud. I touched the framed letter hanging on the wall. Dad's final message to me. He knew this would happen. He spent 20 years preparing for someone who would use this technology the right way. The factory now houses the Morgan Institute for Advanced Manufacturing. We don't just make things, we develop new ways to help people. Every innovation is open source, protected by Dad's quantum encryption to ensure it can't be weaponized or exploited. Thomas and Wong went to prison for corporate espionage. Katherine lost control of most of the family properties when her involvement was exposed. The Morgan family fortune largely disappeared. But something better emerged from the ashes. Last week, I received a letter from a young girl who received one of our medical implants. I can walk again, she wrote. Thank you for making this possible. I keep that letter next to Dad's. They remind me that true value isn't measured in dollars or stock prices. It's measured in lives changed, in innovations that serve humanity rather than exploit it. The old factory isn't just worth more than gold. It's worth more than all the wealth my siblings fought over. Because inside its walls, we're not just building products. We're building the future Dad always envisioned. A future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. And that's an inheritance worth protecting.